6:01 p.m., February 3rd, 2025, and this is our workshop meeting. Mary Ann, can I get roll call?
Mayor Young.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sartori.
Here.
Councilmember Painter.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon. Councilmember French.
Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is to discuss the proposed Village of Tequesta legislative priorities. Jeremy?
As you may recall from previous years, the village has set legislative priorities. This allows staff to support or oppose legislation that aligns with the village of Tequesta. In the past, during legislative sessions, we are busy tracking and supporting these bills. This resolution will allow us to begin tracking and align our priorities. And when we hear the items come up, this matches with what, take our stance on it. From time to time, the state does bring up issues that have not been addressed at the Florida League of Cities or even the county-wide. Anything new that comes up, we'd have to bring back for council to get support. But this allows us to fast track and be able to respond to bills or put together a stance on something very quickly based on what council's priorities are. And so in this packet, you have the Florida League of Cities position and priorities, as well as the Palm Beach County League of Cities position. That's typically what we have tried to follow and adopt. From time to time, we've added a few. There is one, and I gave you guys the backup. The Clerks Association is asking municipalities to support some public records exemptions to allow the clerks for safety, so they don't have to list their addresses, because from time to time they deal with sensitive information, and this gives them some additional protections. And so that's what the Clerks Association is asking municipalities to adopt a stance on that. So I'd like to add some language in here that captures that if council is open to it.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Any comments, questions for discussion?
Talking specifically about the municipal clerk. Talking specifically about this?
Or just, well, this would be added, and then
Okay.
also just anything, if anything caught your eye on the resolution. And maybe just real quick for some more background, I might be confusing it for something else. Wasn't there a public records exemption state bill last session or the session before that did not pass?
Yes.
Well, who was it for, or can you
I think
elaborate?
they had something on there for the managers and I believe the clerks as well, right? And then they end up not passing on either one of them.
So last year, the clerks advocated for this. I know even at the League's Legislative Policy Committee meeting, it did not make either the priority or the discussion topic, but I remember it was brought up in the committee meeting. Last year, what passed, a public records exemption for personal information for currently sitting local government attorneys passed, which was an interesting limitation. It only applies as long as you're serving, and once you're not doing that work anymore, the exemption goes away, which is different than like for law enforcement. Those pretty much stay with you for life. So that passed last year. The clerks brought this one back this year. Again, I think it went to the Municipal Operations Committee, and it may have been brought up, but again, it didn't, as you know, did not make the cut. So the clerks are, trying to get grassroots support for this at this level.
Okay, hopefully that helped a little bit.
I support adding it as a one of our priorities.
I agree with Patrick. I don't see the harm in doing that, and if it keeps other people safe, I don't see why we wouldn't. I'm okay with adding it to the agenda. And the agenda itself, the legislative agenda, we participated in that. So, Mayor, I know you've done a lot of legwork on a lot of those things. So, I'm in favor of the whole shooting match.
Yep, I'm in favor of adding the clerk public records exemption too.
So we'll change that, put in the resolution in time for the next council meeting for us to adopt. and it'll be something along the lines of support legislation that provides additional protections for the clerks as part of the public records exemption. You know, as you guys know, we're not going to be up there writing a bill for it, but if a bill does come up, we'll be able to support it with this language.
And then, Keith, can you just remind us too, during session, at least I do think, you know, adopting the Florida League of Cities, Palm Beach County, and then there was still kind of a live local, blurb on there that was kind of unique to our resolution, not on either of the other platforms, and then adding this. Generally, we're covered, but, you know, things can pop up, and sometimes they happen fast. So what is, like, would we have to call a special meeting if something that, like, say the manager deemed it very important, or one of us saw it and thought it was very important? How does that work? Because sometimes it happens so fast, like you'd have to call a special meeting that week, or what, is there any leeway there?
If we could figure out a way to articulate even in general terms, but specific enough to capture, you know, you could delegate that authority, but you know, if you just say anything else the manager thinks is important, that I don't think that's what you want to do.
Jeremy's like, please don't do that to me.
Even that's
I don't
what
want that.
Jeremy wants to do. So, I mean, I think we're, you know, same as last year. I don't have a good answer for you on how to articulate that.
Okay.
I think the only issues that I think have maybe come up, you know, recently with that, because for the most part, we're able with this to really capture a lot of the big items. I think maybe 3 years ago, like there was some kind of environmental or EAC issue that kind of popped out with work they wanted us to support, so we came back and had another conversation. But for the most part, I think we've been able to handle those as they've come up. But so I think we should be okay.
Okay, so yeah, like if anything really pressing came up, like we would have to have a special meeting, so we'll address that if it happens.
And the only other thing I can think of, just ask Jeremy, we're gonna have our lobbyist in Tallahassee, and, you know, to the extent the lobbyist is there, if the council wanted to authorize the mayor to coordinate with the manager to give direction to the lobbyist, I suppose you could do something like that, but, I mean, that doesn't get it in writing, but it at least gets it into his head to try and chase it.
Okay. All right, any other comments on this one?
None for me.
Okay, any public comment? All right, moving on, agenda item 2, update on our strategic plan from 2023 to 2024.
Something happened to my screen here. So, you know, we went through this process starting back in February, March of last year, identified our priorities. We had a consultant come in. We prioritized those and put in part of a strategic plan. The detailed plan is on our website, and you can really drill down. I'm going to give a kind of a high level of the strategic plan, where we are, updated, because as you guys know, March 7th, we'll be having our strategic plan workshop. So this is kind of the kickoff for where we are with these priorities. As we transition some off, we're going to be picking some new ones up, and this will kind of get the juices flowing as we work toward next year's strategic plan, or the 25-26 strategic plan. I won't go through all this, is all part of your packet. You know, we've really narrowed down to 4 core values that we try to strategic results, and that's operative, fiscally responsible government. So all of them are going to fall into one of these 4 categories: protect community appearance, character, and identity, build and maintain municipal infrastructure, and then maintain level of service at the intended level of operational excellence. We identified 22 objectives. That should be 24, 25. I got the wrong version, but 22 objectives. I color code them. 16 are on track, okay, or been completed. 3 are slow moving or behind schedule, and we can kind of focus on those. Or 3 have not been completed, halted, or behind. the way that they're listed in the way that we prioritize them. So these first four are the highest priority objectives. And I'm gonna go into details, but then you got your next group, which are just your priority objectives. And then the last group are gonna be just the ones that were approved, that were mentioned, something we should work for, but we weren't gonna necessarily prioritize them as budget. If we could afford them, we could, but I think some of these are like educational and golf carts. Not a huge budget impact. So as we kind of get into the four pillars here, operate a physically responsible government, we put these initiatives or results in categories. And so you have the top one in each thing. In red, you will see how they were ultimately prioritized. So in this one, this is number one in this category, but it was number 3 overall. And it's identify additional CIP funding source. This one just has to be in yellow, which is one of those ones that we're still trying to work through. End of 2025, that infrastructure surtax will sunset. We've been talking about that for quite a long time now. We haven't necessarily identified a new funding source for it. I think it's going to be one of those things that we're going to have to prioritize our general fund budget to cover some of our capital expenditures. We have done a good job with vehicles, obviously our fire vehicles, and then now the rest of the fleet vehicles. We've done some work with roads and sidewalks, and we have money set aside for those. It's going to be some of the other items like facilities, IT infrastructure. Those are items that we're going to be missing out on $630,000 of revenue for capital in the coming years that we won't have, that we still need to figure out a way to place that, or to renew that revenue source. So that'll be a discussion that we can still move forward with in the next year's next year's strategic plan. Continue vehicle replacement fund. I put transitions off because I think we're going now. We have authorized that. We have the funding set aside, and each year we'll have funding set aside. That was, I think, a huge step for the village, and very important for us for that stability and sustainability for that. Protect community appearance, character, and identity. Consider Remembrance Park Phase 2. As you guys remember, we set aside originally in that budget for the Phase 2 two parts. In the 301, which is our infrastructure surtax, we set aside planning money. At that point during the budget process, we decided to hold off on that until we actually get Remembrance Park done. We still have that money earmarked and set aside, not using it for anything, but then we also were trying to set aside money for the next phase of the park. We originally planned, I think, for like $550,000, but you know, we did some work with the fire contract to bring salaries up, and so you know we're estimating we have about $200,000 for Phase 2 Remembrance Park set aside still for that, but it's not the $550 that we originally set out. And then so with that, you know, that'll be, you know, something to continue to put on the radar for our strategic plan, to consider that, and we'll have that conversation at the workshop, but you know, continue to look at funding Phase 2 of that park. Expand tree planting efforts. I think we've done a good job, obviously implemented Adopt a Tree program. We've you know, last year's budget, we set aside $75,000. I think we did $69,000 worth of trees on Tequesta Drive. This year, we planted over 90 trees as part of Remembrance Park project. I think the next step for us, and we're going to look at a tree rebate program instead of the Adopt a Tree program that we'll pitch to you guys in the workshop. But I think a big part of for us to look at would be what is the goal that we should be shooting for. And Jay and I were kind of throwing around, do we want to put, you know, do we want to be 5% more within 5 years? Do we want to put plant 100 trees a year for the next 5 years? Like, let's put together some kind of goal that we want to do, because you know, we can plant 1 tree, we can plant 100 trees every year. Like, what is the council's ultimate vision for that, and try to set a goal, like a 5-year goal of what we want to plant. And we met with a company that's what they do. They said, I think they were saying like West Palm or something, they have a goal of like 10,000 trees in 5 years. Like, let's set a goal of 500 trees in 5 years or something, and then we can work toward it. And I say do it over a 5-year period, because if there's a year we can't afford it, maybe the next year we can come back and make up for it. And We were funding that first phase of the tree planting program out of this infrastructure surtax. However, as we know, that's going away, so we don't have that source anymore, so we'll have that discussion as we move forward. Seek initiatives to reduce the village's carbon footprint. We have made some strides there. Obviously, the tree planting effort, water treatment plant upgrades, we're continuing to look at EV as an option, and I know there was some other items that we'll continue to look at that was part of the EAC evaluation that they did with an organization that came in. Determine the impact of proactive code enforcement. I know some of these items just went through LPA, and the council will be seeing those. We workshopped those about construction site policy, noise pollution control, and control options. You guys will see that. So I think we've done we brought that one, full circle once council hears that in February. And I think there might even be a second reading in March, because I think it's an ordinance. But I think we've tackled that one. I think the next step is just track it to see if we're being effective. But for the most part, we've tackled that initiative, I think. Expanding critical land areas and serve and maintain the village's distinctive features through the civic and open space requirements. That was part of our master corridor plan. We have done that. We've included some of that in the code, so I think we've tackled that one. Beautification of Old Dixie. We went through the whole process of working with the county to try to get them to help fund the planning stage of that. We set aside $60,000 in our CIP to partner with them. They pay 30, we pay 30. They put some very unreasonable restrictions on the interlocal agreement for that beautification that I know legal looked at it, Doug and we all looked at it, and we just felt like it wasn't. We sent some comments back, and they didn't want to change a single word of it. So we don't really know where to go with that unless we're going to be taking on a huge risk. Just a couple of the highlights. There was like 4 or 5 that we just wouldn't like, but if we go through this and we decide that it's $200,000, we decide not to fund it in a specific amount of time, they can ask for their money back. And I don't, and if we design it not to their satisfaction, they can ask for their money back. It was just the indemnity clause that was in there for our protection, they didn't want that in there, but they left theirs in there. So it really left some liability for the village, which is a big sticky point for us. So that one, I'm not sure how far we're going to be able to go with the beautification of Old Dixie and adding those medians. I think we can do some beautification of Old Dixie. It's just not going to be maybe the median approach at this point. Maybe some trees, along the right of way. We'd have to work with FEC to, Doug and I have talked about some plans about, putting some additional hedges in, some trees, along there to beautify it. Maybe that's the approach we go with for that one. So we can have that discussion as we move forward as well. Expand educated policy on golf carts and e-bikes. I think this one's going to be, just an evolving, circle. I know the mayor has heard some complaints, and some of the other council members too. It's kind of like golf carts. It kind of goes through, ebbs and flows. The state allows for e-bikes and golf carts. It's really hard to, especially like e-bikes now, it's really hard to enforce. With the e-bikes, they're allowed to ride them, unless our police see a specific violation. They're allowed on the sidewalks. I mean, and we haven't seen, I know our residents are, frustrated with it, but they're allowed. And so, other than some education, and programs, I know the chief and I have talked about a couple other education things we can do in the near future. When we start talking about, what we want to do with that, I mean, our best option if we just really don't like the e-bikes is to, be up in Tallahassee asking for legislation to give us home rule and allow us to remove them. But at this point, we can't just outright ban them. And so, I'm all ears. I know the chief and I, we talk about we scour the internet, other municipalities, see what they're doing. Everybody's having a problem with e-bikes. It's not just the village of Tequesta. It's an issue. I think probably Mr. Bradford can attest to this. It started with like skateboards back in the day. Skateboards were everywhere, and what are you going to do with skateboards? And they're always, running people off the sidewalks. And then it became bikes, and now we're at e-bikes, and I'm sure it'll be hoverboards or something in the future. Doesn't take away from the problem. It's just looking for the creative ways to do it. And so we're continuing to look. We're all ears if there's solutions. at this point, the best solution might be to ask for legislation to ban them, but I don't know that our citizens would love that either. So we can have future discussion on that one. If anybody's got any ideas in the workshop, we can discuss that. Continue to address community recreation needs. This one came up in the strategic plan workshop. I think it was really just addressed to make sure that we continue to fund events and bring out that community character. I think we've done that. Council was supportive of the events, Tequesta Fest and the Christmas events, and we've funded those and continue to fund those in our budget process. Build and maintain municipal infrastructure, provide additional match funding, state appropriations for Tequesta Park. We've done that. We are still waiting the funding agreement as of January 15th. They said it was still in the queue. They were still working on it. Ours was a little more complicated because of the fiasco with the state and, turning the state parks into golf courses, that they had to do some additional background for our park and our appropriation because of that. And the ownership situation really complicated. So as of the 15th of January, they were still awaiting it. They expected it to be done soon. So hopefully we'll get that appropriation and be able to start working on the planning for the master plan of the park. Conduct fee analysis, stormwater. We did punt this one this last year. We originally budgeted or thought we were going to be able to budget $60,000. We had got from Kimley Horn and our rate analysis of like $80,000 quote, when we only had like $100,000 in reserves. So between Jeff and I, we thought it would be best to wait, take the normal rate structure that we already had planned, try to build up our reserves a little bit. We did fund a little bit of maintenance projects, but I think you guys are seeing that on your agenda coming, that there are a couple of maintenance repairs for stormwater that we have money to cover basic maintenance. I think long-term, we still need to work on, a plan for our stormwater. I think that's our one fund that, concerns me on a daily basis. And so I think, moving this next year, that will have to be a priority to make sure that we fund that fee analysis, and hopefully our stormwater fund can fund that analysis. Develop future master facilities plans. We will be able to discuss that at our next workshop, and we're got to the point where we kind of know what our needs or what our direction that we want to recommend to council. And so it's in yellow because we really haven't done too much with that until we have a discussion with council. But I mean, I think there is a future needs discussion that needs to happen. I mean, we have Station 11 that's been sitting there for almost 10 years that, is not usable. It's, bad shape. We have some facility needs, water plant distribution, Bridge Road is gonna need some improvements. So I think, we really, what we've done with roads, what we've done with vehicles, we really need to start leaning forward on facilities. Even if we're not building new facilities, we need to really talk about the maintenance of our old facilities and trying to start putting some money toward that. Implement a citizen-led petition process for undergrounding. I know at our strategic plan workshop last year, there was the infrastructure master plan was part of the one of the initiatives. Also came up as, create a citizen-led petition process for undergrounding. I think, I know Jay, Ms. Bradford, who's done this, it still all leads to doing a master plan. If you don't have a master plan that gives citizens the knowledge of what it's going to cost, or even the village the knowledge of what it's going to cost, then you don't have anything. A citizen's going to be, yeah, I want undergrounding, but if they don't know how much it costs, and we don't know how much it costs, even just for their area. So if an organization, let's just say the country club, wanted to go and say, we all want, we're going to do a petition, 51%, all say we want undergrounding over there, we don't know what that will even cost. So, and they don't know what it would cost just for the country club. So like, they could say, yeah, we want it. But then you come back and tell them that's going to be $10,000 a year to do it. They're going to be like, maybe I don't want it. So really, if we want to do anything with undergrounding, the master plan is something we need to get done, and then we can decide, if we just want it to be citizen-led, or we want to drive it. If you guys remember when we had FP&L do an estimate, I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was like an $80 million, ask, to do undergrounding throughout the village of Tequesta. It's pretty hefty tag. No matter how you pay for it. So I know there's not a lot of funding out there for that. There's a couple grants that we can go for. I think we went for one a couple of years ago to do the master plan. We didn't even get the funding to do the plan itself. So, you know, I'll take direction any way the council wants to go as we move forward with that one. Fund Tequesta Bridge future maintenance. I know Doug is working on we've authorized the plans for that. So I think Kinley Horn is working on that. And so next year, I think we plan on it by the end of this year, bring it to council at the end of in September or so, authorize the work to start in October for the bridge improvements. If you've ever been down by the bridge on the sides, rusted out some of the beams, I think they're gonna go through and sandblast them and really just do some maintenance on the bridge. I mean, I think that's a 15-year-old bridge, or if not, I mean, and it hasn't really ever had any maintenance done to it. So I think this is, I don't want to say routine maintenance, but maintenance that needs to be done. So we have that planned in our capital improvement plan moving forward. So we're on track for that one. Develop long-term coastal resiliency. I think we've taken steps on this one. I wasn't sure how to get there when we first started. I know our EAC chair went to one of the conferences, you know, came back with some ideas and some hope. I know the council supported like living shoreline, which I think is kind of part of that. The Jupiter Narrows, reducing the speed. I think that's all talking about, you know, helping the shoreline. Obviously the living shoreline ordinance that we passed. So I think we've done some things. I don't think it's to the extent of, you know, on the coast. I think there's still some things we're searching for answers for. Obviously Palm Beach County has control of that, and we've been an advocate and had them come in and do a presentation, not only to you guys, but the EAC as well. So we're still working toward that. I think we've made some good strides on that one though. Continue sidewalk plan. We've funded $170,000 in sidewalks the last 2 years. We have some plans to do sidewalks in this year as well. I don't want to say I don't have it in yellow because I don't think it's held up too much, but we do have to do some improvements at the intersection of Tequesta Drive and Seabrook to make those that intersection ADA compliant with some horns or some lights. And so whatever money we need for that, we'll subtract from the sidewalk program. We're expecting $15,000 to $20,000, so we're still going to have over $150,000 of improvements to sidewalks. And I think the plan we have now is for the east side or the north going east on Tequesta Drive of the railroad tracks. Is that right? So we're making strides with that. We're right on track. Establish a safe and quiet railroad crossing. I think we're on track as much as we can do. We're at the mercy of a couple organizations. I know Doug met with TPA, FDOT. They've agreed to fund our second set of arms that we need for that intersection, so we don't have to do any work on private property. I know that was a big, everybody was a little hesitant to do that, but I think the work that Doug has done with that, and I commend him. He's been pretty much relentless on that front, trying to get them to agree that there's some safety concerns that we need to address, not only for the quiet zone, but just for the safety of our residents. And so they're gonna fund, I think it was almost $600,000 they're gonna do through a grant through FDOT, and that's gonna be done within the next 8 months, they tell us. So, I know Jupiter's working on quiet zone, we're working on it, Martin County's still in the progress too, so hopefully it'll all tie in together. That's the hope anyways. High-level transportation plan with mobility planning. As you guys know, we've already kicked that off. You guys will see on a consent agenda the agreement that we have with them, but we have a meeting Wednesday to kick that project off and get that going. I know Jay's already been sending them a whole bunch of information, and then establish a business liaison new responsibility. As you guys know, we've already done that. We've already I think we transitioned off. NARA, does some communication with businesses, still tries to keep that line of communication open. If new business comes up, she's able to provide them resources through SBDC and any other resources that are needed. If they need a permit through the county for alcohol or whatever, she's able to help them. So I think it's a good fit for the in the building department and those responsibilities. I won't go through all these, but I just highlight some accomplishments that we had throughout the year. Vehicle replacement fund, some different stuff. I know we did some improvements to the water treatment plan, some, improvements with utilities. I think we've done quite a bit. And then, 2 pages of those. And then just kind of highlight it for you guys as we start thinking about the next stage, strategic plan, just some of our future challenges that we need to really just keep an eye on. We obviously loss of our surtax, home and state preemption, home rule state preemptions, that's always going to be on our list probably. Updating, improving our water infrastructure, we've been doing a good job with that. I would say if we can keep going with that. Stormwater infrastructure, I probably should have put an asterisk or 2 by that one. I think, why we don't have any, stormwater infrastructure per se, like to expand our system, I think, the maintenance of it continues to be important that we look at that. And, I know Village Charm, that's always a big one. I know we made some strides with Master Corridor Plan and Beach Road, design guidelines. I think continuing to look at that Village Charm and, from our standpoint internally, competitive wages and benefits. You guys have been very supportive of that. We'll be looking at that again. As you guys know, we authorized a compensation study to be done. We do have PBA and there's not a CWA right now, but I know they're looking to get recertified. We'll be having that up this year as well. So let's see. The next steps, we'll see if you guys are going to receive a questionnaire, a worksheet to help solicit some feedback leading up to that strategic plan, so we don't just show up cold. We'll kind of have, kind of our thoughts lined up. And I'll meet with you guys, we'll discuss those, make sure I understand, maybe even be able to develop a plan prior to getting there. So when we get to the strategic plan workshop on the 7th, we can just be discussing those, make sure everybody understands what they are. We can prioritize those, rank those, and then in April, council consider adopting the strategic plan, and then we'll use that plan to help, set budgeting priorities. And, it's always the best key for us is when I look at that plan, it was, pretty easy to prioritize the budget because you guys are prioritizing it with a strategic plan. So with that, if you guys want to drill down to any specific items, I can do that. It was a little longer winded than I thought I was going to do, but thought it was important.
Thank you, Jeremy. And real quick to add to this, I know the EAC in December had on their agenda their strategic priorities. I don't think they talked about it on their January agenda, but if they have anything that they'd like council to consider, are they going to come to our workshop, or what's the best path there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be on their workshop, the next meeting, and then they will memorialize that with a memo or a document to staff. And then I will share that with all of council for you guys to consider as you guys go into the meetings with me and you guys have your initiatives and your items, considering whatever they have. I can't recall, if they've even really addressed it yet, but that'll be on their workshop the next month. And so I think you guys will get a good sense of what they're looking for.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, any comments, questions for discussion?
I don't think I have anything specific. Just want to commend staff. I know staff got a lot done, and the stuff that we didn't quite get to, I understand why, but yeah, thank you for all your hard work.
I mean, most of this was pretty consistent with what we do work on throughout the year. For undergrounding, I have not heard an update on where FP&L was, because they were going around doing their public outreach. So if some parts of the village are going to get done, that would change what we would be looking at cost-wise to present to residents who wouldn't be getting it through the program of FP&L, which would change our numbers to them. That's the only thing I haven't been updated on. That's not on you guys. It's just I don't know where they're at on their public outreach and their stages of their what was after the public outreach? It was the design. Thank you. Yeah.
We'll try to get an update for you by the March 7th meeting or prior when I have your guys' discussions, individual discussions. We'll have an update. I'll send out to all the council. I did try to, I put together a map of what has been undergrounded and what hasn't. I mean, there's still, a
I know there'd be a
significant part
lot.
of the village.
It'll help me
that-
determine, for me at least, where I would prioritize that.
But I don't think that you're gonna be able to have a number of what it's gonna cost, without a master plan and a rate analysis of what that would be.
Okay. That's it for now.
I don't have any comments.
Doug, do you have something to add? Do you want to come up to the podium?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, when FPL works on, finishes their plan for the next phase of undergrounding, about 40 homes, I've asked them to share their costs, and they're not willing to share their underground costs with us, just so you know.
They won't even give us like an idea of what the next potential phase would be either, right? Because I feel like you've asked that and
We don't know when they'll be back, but, we'll keep pressuring them, and it's always helpful, again, for the residents to call in, and if they're having issues with their service, electrical service at the house, to call FPL and complain. All that gets logged, and that's how FPL basically ranks these cities. They know where they have their deficiencies, but they also look at the resident calls.
And I think this first phase is not that many line miles of what we have.
No.
Isn't it like
But
six
it
or?
impacts about 640 homes, residents.
But of all the line miles that needs to be done, it's pretty small
Very
chunk
small.
of that.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor?
Nope, no comments.
Two high-level stuff, because I know we'll get in the weeds at the workshop. CA5, which says expand critical land areas that serve to maintain the village's distinctive features through civic and open space requirements. I believe, if you roll back up to under the approved, what's under approved? Hold on, give me a second. Anyways, point of me bringing it up, I think originally it was here it is, it's under approved purchase critical land areas. It kind of started that conversation too, because I think this has almost been on for 2 strategic plans in a row. But council had wanted to, see if we could acquire more lands for open space too. So I'm just throwing that out there for food for thought for the workshop. We don't have to get in the weeds today, but that's where it started. Do we still want to consider that? I know we did that, kind of policy for acquiring open space, right? Because we didn't have that. We did that a couple years ago, but nothing's really been done since then. So, and then the only other one, I know on the coastal resiliency one, we had talked about joining the Florida Shore and Beach Preservation Association for at least a year to see if that, if we could add any value there and vice versa. Did we ever join that?
Yeah, I think we did, and I think that's the conference that we went to, that we sent, the chair of the EAC went to that. I think I had a meeting and Jay had another conflict, so we thought the best thing to do was send the EAC chair, and so he went. I think he thought the world of the conference from what I heard, and so we are part of that organization.
Okay, maybe at the workshop you can kind of give us an update
Yeah.
on what that entails and what was discussed at the conference and if it adds any value to us. All right, that's all I have. All right. Anything else, council?
Nothing for me.
Well, any public comment? Mr. Bradford?
Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail, Tequesta. I realize this might not be strategic plan worthy, what I'm about to say, but I think it's strategic nonetheless. And the subject matter is internet service. And where do I start? I've heard that in Tequesta Country Club, they either are or will or have installed fiber optic cable throughout that neighborhood, subdivision, which is great. It's fantastic. But people like me at Tequesta Pines, we don't have that. And let me give an example about how bad it is in Tequesta Pines. So with AT&T, the maximum speed that you can get is 50 megabytes per second. 1 gig, a typical thing that many people want today, is 1,000 megabytes per second. So we're living over on my neighborhood in the dark ages, so to speak. And meanwhile, the Internet of Things continues to grow steadily. 1 or 2 things are added to your internet on an annual basis. That's been my average. My pool pump is on the internet. My irrigation system is on the internet. Next thing, that new HVAC is going to be internet controlled. So I can be in Istanbul and control the water system. So that's the way it's going, but every time you do it, it tends to slow things down. So I'm not suggesting that you guys appropriate any money. I'm suggesting somehow, perhaps through the mayor or the manager, you write all of the primary fiber optic players, and not just the normal ones like Xfinity and so forth. Hotwire, for example, is an excellent company, and they're Florida-based, and I think it's Broward County where they're based, but just let them know that Tequesta is a relatively affluent community, and we want the best for our citizens, and would you please look into providing high-speed internet in the areas of our village that don't have that service. That's all I'm saying. Let's just try to get them to do this thing, because we're going to fall behind if we don't have it, actually. So it's kind of strategic, preparing for the future. We need to get it now so that people can work from home, the businesses can have high speed, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just suggesting it's strategic, might not be strategic plan worthy, but could you at least write letters to the providers and just let them know we're interested in having it happen. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like-
Doug, you have something to add?
Yeah, if I could just add to that. AT&T is in the process of running fiber optic infrastructure throughout the village. They actually installed their infrastructure on Seabrook Road. They've already come down County Line Road, they've gone down Chapel Court and all the side streets there. So they're making their way. They're looking at now whether they need another tower in your area. But they have fiber optics all the way to Remembrance Park right now. You'll see it on the poles there. Yeah. So they're working, AT&T is working towards that.
Can we see if we can go,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about it offline, see if they can provide any kind of schedule for us
Yeah.
or whatever that we can
Map.
update Mr. Bradford to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think they just ran utilities on Tequesta Drive too, and they actually, closer to the country club in front of the church, and AT&T Fiber had a tent set up in front of Bermuda Terrace Friday. So, if they're doing an event like that to educate the community about what they have brought or are bringing to the community, it would be great if we could know, so we could put something on our,
Yeah,
all our
I can get an
communication
update.
platforms. Because I was like, at first, like, who's set up tent? And then it's like, oh, it's AT&T, and people were randomly pulling over. But I'm sure if people that don't traverse that area normally would have known it was there, like, more people might have, want to come.
Yeah, they've gone down Point Drive, Bayview Estates, Shady Lane, and unincorporated Palm Beach and Bermuda Terrace. So they're all, AT&T is all over. Yeah, but I can get an update.
Thank you. Okay, any other council comment?
Nope, thank you.
Okay. Moving on, agenda item 3, discussion on the local option gas tax renewal.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it kind of captures it fairly well in the agenda memo, but 1985, the county levied a 6-cent local option tax for 30 years. What the county is looking to do is to renew that. It's been 30 years, and so you guys, what they're asking for, they need, in order to keep the formula the same, they need 51% of the population of Palm Beach County in order to renew it. Keith has advised me that they can renew it without the interlocal agreement, but what the interlocal agreement does is set that formula, and so they're looking for 51% of the population to enter into this agreement. And so what you guys have in front of you is that as a sample of that, and Keith probably has more information than I would, but to me, staff's recommending it. We don't. I think we have $129,000 that we receive for. It's up there, $132,000 to receive in this 6-cent sales tax, and so we're recommending that we renew this.
Keith, do you have anything to add?
In terms of the interlocal agreement, whether or not Tequesta signs off, once enough municipalities that represent a majority of the county population in the incorporated areas sign off, the distribution formula will be effective. So under the statute, once the municipalities that represent 50% plus one of the people living in incorporated areas have signed off, it will be effective. If it doesn't go into effect, the county can still would be a renewal of the local option tax that's been in effect for 30 years. The county can still renew it, but the distribution would not be pursuant to an interlocal agreement. It would be pursuant to a statutory formula, which is less beneficial to the municipalities than the current distribution formula.
Thank you.
Is it-
Council?
Is there any reason that you could see this not going forward, Keith, as far as hitting that 51% threshold? And kind of a second part of that question, is there any reason, I mean, it seems very straightforward to me, but any reason we wouldn't want to? Doesn't seem like there is, but.
This would maintain the status quo for
Yeah.
another 30 years.
Okay, I'm good.
No change to the amount of the tax, the term of the tax, the distribution formula for the tax. This would keep it the same as it's been since 1995.
Okay, I'm good with it.
And I think, didn't the Palm Beach County League of Cities Board, it was the one meeting I missed, it was on the November agenda the day before Thanksgiving. Didn't they review it? And I don't think the board had any.
No
With
issues,
it.
no, there was no, League of Cities has no issues with this.
I'm good.
I think we should, I'm in favor of it, collect it while we can. Especially in light of, losing over $600,000 in surtax. And is there, I know they've talked about it, and I know League of Cities had a comment about it as well, I think it might have been at the Florida League, with the electronic vehicles not paying into this. Is that something that, I think we'll see this continue to go down? That amount will become less and less, I think, on an annual basis.
And that is certainly an important topic that, as more and more electric vehicles go on the road, that's, every time one more EV goes on, that's one less car that's buying gas.
Yeah.
So, that is correct. And, as always, the law is always struggling to keep up with the state of the art in technology. And this is another great example. I mean, this is still gasoline, and there's nothing's been passed that captures the issue of how to handle electric vehicles yet.
That was a discussion at Florida League City. Part of my committee is trying to capture those as those go, that revenue goes down, trying to capture it through the registration process for sales. And so the Florida League Cities has taken a stance, which is in your backup, that if there is legislation, that it's written that way, that everybody pays their equal share, no matter whether you're gas or electric. So I'm sure through the legislation process this year, we'll see something that comes out of it, or at least there'll be a couple bills. I don't know, what it'll amount to, but yeah.
Yeah, I know, you were at the delegation meeting, and the state legislators did not see eye to eye on it.
Right.
Some thought that it should be taken up at a national level, and some thought, no, we're not waiting on feds, what the state should get ahead of it. I will say at our last League of Cities board meeting, it was brought up, reaching out to the National League of Cities. We're not sure if they're taking this up or not, so we are looking into that avenue as well. All right, I have nothing to add. I support it. Any public comment?
That just goes on.
Okay.
Just goes on the next.
All right, moving on to the final agenda, item 4, discussion on support of collaborative process for purposes of developing and adopting a countywide comprehensive transportation plan. Keith or Jeremy?
I told Jeremy I'd give his voice box a break for the last agenda item. So this is, the council saw this resolution at its last workshop, and since then, based on the discussion at that workshop, I've added some language that talks about, this is the process where a firm will be procured to develop a regional multimodal transportation plan for the entire county. The county wants local government, the municipal governments to be involved. This talks about, expanding I-Park, talks about creating or having the City Managers Association involved, creating the multi-jurisdictional issue coordination forum executive committee to kind of oversee the consulting firm, and it talks about I-Park being the expanding its authority to include the appropriate stakeholders to provide technical and legislative guidance to this process. Based on the discussion at the last workshop, I've added language that speaks to preserving municipal home rule and local control over land use decision-making. Actually based on some of the explanatory language in your agenda item memo, thought would be to perhaps enhance that language by specifically calling out any amendments that may be necessary to the village's comprehensive plan, future land use element, transportation element, and for sure, perhaps intergovernmental coordination element, whatever other, just to basically say we are still in control of our comp plan, and anything we adopt is gonna be based on the needs of the village, and not just parroting back what the county tells us or what the county says. So the revised resolution is in the backup for you for further direction and discussion.
And just real quick, I think to kind of elaborate on what he said about elaborating maybe a little bit more on that, protecting home rule on our comp plan. So first of all, I think, generally the resolution is what has happened, and Jeremy agrees, and because the Managers Association has been very involved with this process. And anything we do or change on this template really isn't going to stop anything that the county's already doing. But I think long-term, we have some kind of protection if it's needed, that we just didn't, boilerplate, everyone else did it and didn't think through it a little bit, just in case down the road it ever comes back, well, you signed, you're in support of this. And specifically the reason it caught my eye, and maybe we want to elaborate more, is on the county RFP, the official scope of work that has been issued that's public. It's a little long, I'm going to read it. It says, in the county's scope of work, the plan will be the first key step towards a countywide transportation and mobility plan for Palm Beach County and municipalities within the county to separately adopt and or update their own specific plan of improvements using the recommended countywide plan as a foundation, which is maybe the opposite of what we might want to do. Like, I don't want to be forced to use the counties if, we have a plan that is a better suit for our community. Each jurisdiction will be able to select appropriate recommendations that fit the needs of each unique community while coordinating regionally significant transportation corridors through the recommended framework. Ultimately, each plan of improvement adopted by each individual jurisdiction may lead to a plan-based improvement methodology as set forth and specifically referenced in Florida state statutes. And it doesn't reference the state statutes, so I don't even know what state statutes they're talking about. Can't go look them up. So again, like I said, it's not going to stop anything that's happening, but if we want to elaborate on the local, home rule, maintaining our comp plan and not, being forced to do something we don't want to do, Keith could maybe beef it up a little bit. And then I think long-term too, because, funding, after you get through this part, funding is going to be the next big question. And who even knows how that's going to go? I mean, if, right now there's a lot of federal funding from that, bipartisan infrastructure bill, and, what's going to happen in that long term, who knows? So the whole funding situation, we don't even know how that will go down the road either. So again, I know it's a little long-winded, but just food for thought, and wanted to get council's consideration on that. With that, any comments or questions?
I just want to make sure that we can do what's best for Tequesta and not do what county or anyone else is doing. because what fits here doesn't fit anywhere else. And I don't like what I see everywhere else, so it often causes more problems, in my opinion. So anything that's, we can add that's even more detailed, I'd be in favor of that.
I agree with what Lori's saying, is that, you know, I think our vision for a mobility plan is not consistent with what the county needs. I mean, West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Gardens, you know, they've got these massive development projects, right, that makes sense for them to have something. You know, we're trying to get people from the country club to Constitution Park without having to go out on the street. That's our mobility. So again, I applaud, I want to participate and be a great partner, but like you said, have the protection to say, you know, we support you, and as long as we have the language in there, and I'm not the guy that's going to write that, you know, I want to support what the county's doing, but like I said, I think our vision and the county vision are two totally different things when it comes to mobility. Our definition of mobility is clearly not what the county's stuff. We're not trying to get people from West Palm to Wellington. We're
Right.
trying to get people from the country club.
We're not making trains.
Yeah, I completely agree. I won't restate it all, but
Okay.
I'm lockstep.
And I think, you know, Jay hopefully is on the iPark 2.0, on the issues forum. So, like I said, I think it is really important for us to stay engaged and collaborate, because at the end of the day, you know, if the county does go through this whole plan, there could be some good stuff on there that we do want to, you know, utilize, but we don't want to be forced, or, right? And because, you know, we do, and they're going to be looking at counties, you know, north and south connectivity, because you think about it, we have residents here that go south for work, go north for work, or we have employees that need to come here. So we do have connectivity from that standpoint. But yeah, you want to maintain, you know, our home rule and decisions ultimately, so. Okay, so you'll, don't need anything else from us, you got it?
Got it.
Okay. Any public comment?
Clear as mud.
Yeah, I agree that you guys need to do whatever gives Tequesta maximum flexibility to protect our interests and/or to do whatever we think is best. But don't forget about keeping Palm Beach County's feet to the fire, okay? I'm sure Doug sees what I see, and Jeremy probably sees it too, but they're doing a horrible job maintaining their roads. Not Tequesta, but, you know, like County Line Road, Old Dixie, they're crumbling. You can see it and you know what the most egregious thing they do? Their striping program is almost non-existent. I mean, you can't even tell, are you in this lane or that lane, or where I mean, it's bad. So make sure when you're looking at these documents or interlocal agreement, make sure you find ways to make them perform, because they're not doing like they used to do. It's kind of gone downhill in the last 5 or so years. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions on this one? Nope. All right, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific.
1 minute under the hour mark.